Hey guys, how's it going? It's Sean. For those of you who don't know, I've been living in South Korea for over 7 years now. So recently I watched the really popular Netflix drama Hellbound, or in Korean, 지옥. Since I loved Squid Game, I was really interested to see what other Korean Netflix dramas were like. I'm happy to say that Hellbound did not disappoint. Before I begin this video, I want to say that any serious English learners should consider joining my channel membership. I provide both English and Korean scripts for all the videos, and silver members get access to videos where you can freely turn captions on and off. Before I begin, spoiler warning: if you haven't watched this drama, watch it, then come back to my video. So Hellbound. When I watched the first episode, it really reminded me of the Japanese manga Death Note. There are a lot of similar themes, and I actually loved Death Note, so I was really excited to keep watching this. However, the more I watched Hellbound, the more I realized that this is a completely unique and original story, and from what I hear, it was also a manga, just like Death Note. So just as a reminder, people in the show were given sentences from these angels of death. A big face would appear that would say, you have 3 days to live, you have 2 years to live, you have 1 year to live, you have 20 years to live. After your time runs out, these black creatures come to Earth, punch you and rip you apart, then shoot white lasers at you that cause you to disintegrate. One guy who had predicted these events and who had been talking about them for years and years, Jung Jin-soo, started to get more and more famous as what he prophesied started to come true. This entire series seemed like a really interesting examination of human nature. There are so many things I want to talk about, but I'll try to stick to the most important points. The first thing I want to talk about is the seductive nature of ideologies. Jung Jin-soo, the creator of the New Truth Society, essentially created a society built on a lie. He claimed that only sinners would be sentenced to hell, even though he knew that this was a lie. He wanted people to live in a more noble and benevolent way, treating others more kindly and with more respect. In his mind, this fear was the greatest tool to keep people in line and to create a good society. We can see in this drama, though, that a major theme is the road to hell is paved by good intentions. So even though he wanted to create a world where people were more benevolent and noble and kind towards one another, this actually created a terrible and violent world. Since everybody thought that only sinners would get sentenced to hell, they started looking around for people who they thought were sinners. This gave rise to the Arrowhead Gang, whose members were convinced that they were upholding the word of God. In one episode, an Arrowhead gang member said to the character Young-jae, "I want to know why you're here if you're from Seoul. I'm just trying to protect this neighborhood." He ends by saying, "남을 위한 마음," or "you've got to be considerate to others." With the Arrowhead gang, I suppose all the violence that they commit is justified because they're trying to eliminate all of the people who are not considerate to others. Anyway, as the show progresses, we see the rise of extremism and the death of nuance. It seems that anybody who isn't entirely convinced of the doctrines of the New Truth Society are somehow not deserving of this kindness that Arrowhead member spoke of. That doesn't seem very considerate to me. There's no kindness and patience with people. There's no willingness to sit down and talk to someone who you don't agree with. You've got to think that this kind of behavior really pushes away people who are on the fence and undecided, haven't made their mind up. Maybe if someone from the Arrowhead gang were to sit down and patiently talk to someone who are on the fence, maybe they would willingly accept the doctrines of the New Truth Society. In this show, though, we see none of that. It's either you accept it or we hurt you. As an American, I see this death of nuance happening all around the United States. As ideologies become more and more extreme, this intolerance of intolerant people becomes more and more pervasive. For example, it's socially acceptable to punch a Nazi or anybody who you think might be a Nazi. On a surface level, anyone would agree with this. Nazis did terrible things. The danger comes in when you ask, what is the definition of a Nazi? What is the definition of someone who is intolerant? Bringing it back to this show, what is the definition of someone who is a sinner? Just like the Arrowhead gang, we see in the US a lot of people committing acts of violence in the name of equality and fairness. They claim to be fighting for understanding, peace, progress, things like this. This kind of extremism leads to witch hunts and vigilante justice as well. People who deny the New Truth Society's doctrines are ridiculed and exiled from society. Many times they're violently harassed or even killed. That doesn't sound very pious to me. What's worse is that innocent bystanders who are related to people who reject the New Truth Society's doctrines are also harassed and sometimes killed. We can see how the Arrowheads targeted Hijin's mother, who did nothing. So it's very interesting to me how the Arrowhead gang really attracts these type of gangsters and no good people who are very violent. People who essentially just want to commit violence and harm others are now justified because they're a part of a noble cause. This is really sad for anybody in these movements who are really trying to affect positive change, because the image of their movement really is brought down a lot by these violent, bad actors. I would argue that we can see this a lot with Antifa in the United States. I'm sure that originally there were a lot of good people in this group, and they were really trying to create peaceful and positive change. But it's no secret that Antifa has attracted people who will violently harass those who disagree with their ideology. It reminds me of the Knights from the Dark Ages and the Middle Ages. Knights were originally just a group of thugs roaming around towns. They had swords and they were ready to fight, but eventually they partnered with the Christian church, and that led way to a bunch of warriors or holy knights who are willing to fight these holy wars. Again, there's a connection here with good movements that attract violent people whose violence is justified by the noble causes that they're a part of. The idea of family guilt or shame is also very prevalent in the show. People who are related to sinners are subjected to a life of torment and harassment by the Arrowhead and being ostracized from people in their communities around them, simply for being related to sinners. We can see this parallel in North Korea. If someone close to you or around you escapes or tries to escape, the entire family is punished. They become ostracized and looked down upon in society. We can see this a lot in communist countries where if your grandparents or your distant relatives were rich landowners, that means that they must have been greedy and evil. And you being related to them, you must also be greedy and evil and therefore a bad person. See, this is why I love this show, because it's such a good examination of a lot of the bad tendencies that human beings tend to have, a lot of which are the result of good intentions. Something else that I really loved about this show was that you could never tell who was going to live or die. One thing that I don't like so much about traditional movies or dramas is that once you find out who the main character is, you can be pretty sure that they're not going to die, so there's no risk involved. With this show, however, many of the major characters died or just disappeared. I love that because it kept me wondering what was going to happen to all the characters. It was so refreshing. I also love the parallel of getting a diagnosis from a doctor to getting a death sentence. So the mother of Hijin got diagnosed with cancer and was said to only have a few more years left to live. So in her mind, she was already sentenced, just like all the other people from these dark angels. There are very few things about this drama that I didn't like. One being that the first episode was a bit slow. Actually, I watched the first episode, and because it didn't hook me immediately, I waited a few weeks to watch the rest of the series. It's kind of a shame because I think a lot of people around me experienced the same thing. Thinking back on it though, I'm pretty sure Squid Game started out kind of slow and then started to pick up at maybe episode 3. Another thing I didn't like so much was how fake the baby looked. I thought it looked like it was made out of rubber or CGI. It just looked really weird. And lastly, the final fight of the series where Hyejin was fighting with the broadcaster crazy Arrowhead guy. It's like this guy was walking towards the baby with a knife and all these people were surrounding him, watching him, and they did nothing. It was really frustrating. Like, why don't they do something? There's chairs, you could throw a chair at him. There's like 50 of you and one of this guy. But these are really small things and they don't take any of the value away from this drama. Overall, I would give this drama a 9.5 out of 10. I actually enjoyed it more than Squid Game. I didn't think I would say that, but it's true. Anyway, those are my thoughts of Hellbound. What did you guys think of the drama? Please let me know in the comments. Also, what other Korean dramas do you want me, an American living in Korea for 7 years, to review? Please let me know in the comments, and of course, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.